So let's all go through some cars passages. I'm gonna do it on two screens, and one is on the desktop that you do not see on my that I do for myself, and the other one is here. So for you, in order to see everything, I will zoom out like that so you can see everything, and on my screen it's like that. That's like how I see the passage. So it's 6 questions. We know that we have to do it in 10 minutes for this one. Now here's the thing. I want to first increase our accuracy to like 0 or 1 incorrect answer. We don't want any stupid answers, like incorrect answers, like to make mistakes or anything. So we want to reduce that to 0, and we will continue until we do that. Okay, I will be also taking notes on my own on a piece of paper, just like the exam day. And if time allows, I will definitely post that on what do you say? I will post that on the screen later. Okay, so let's begin. I mean, the time kind of doesn't matter since we just want to get accuracy. Giovanni Boccaccio. So the name of the title is Poetry at Last, Troilus and Chrysaid. It's 2007 also. Giovanni Boccaccio wrote Il Filastrato, his poem about the Trojan War, at Naples in his early 20s. Its preface claims that the young, love-struck author's lady has moved away beyond the mountains. This fits nicely with imaginings of Troy, with Greeks encamped beyond the city walls. The political story of Troy was always tragic. This is something that will go into our notes. It was an ancient city besieged by the Greeks for 10 years and eventually destroyed by the Greek army. It gave us the ancient notion of tragedy, the political destruction of a city-state. Boccaccio drew Chrysaid much further into the foreground than stories of the Trojan War had earlier placed her. He chose to focus upon her relationship with Troilus. Things go well so long as the affair stays within the walls of Troy. Things go badly once politics dictate Chrysaid's being given over to the Greeks in a prisoner exchange. So the main point that we get from this passage is that the political story of Troy was always tragic. So, tragic political story of Troy. And why was this very tragic? So it was an ancient city besieged by the Greeks for 10 years and eventually destroyed by the Greek army. So to those Greeks destroyed it. That should be good for now. Since London styled itself Troy Novant or New Troy, imagining itself founded by the former Trojan Brutus, Geoffrey Chaucer immediately saw great potential in the way that Boccaccio's tale could resonate with the English. So he translated Boccaccio's work as Troilus and Chryside. London and Westminster in Chaucer's time were not the same place. London protected to the east by the Tower of London and surrounded by the Thames and the city wall was separate from the Abbey and Palace of Westminster. Chaucer's walled Troy conflates city and palace, and in that way is different than his experience of a city like London. So the point here in this paragraph, what does the author want us to know? Is that Geoffrey Chaucer saw the potential in Boccaccio's tale that could resonate with the English people, so he translated that. So Chaucer translated Boccaccio it resonated with the English. London and Westminster in Chaucer's times were not the same place. London protected too. So that should be in the next. That should be like explained in further detail in the next paragraph. So we expected. That's how it is. The third paragraph. But Chaucer's Troy was like London in other ways. His imagining of Troy as a city besieged was inspired by his memory of 1381 when a peasant army had camped outside the city walls and then poured in through Aldgate, the gate above with which Chaucer, a royal servant, was then living. The peasants destroyed the Savoy palace of John of Gaunt, a patron of Chaucer's, and then murdered the Archbishop of Canterbury. So the point of the third paragraph is that so in the last sentence it says Chaucer's walled Troy conflates city and palace, and in that way is different than his experience of a city like London. And before that he says London and Westminster were not the same place. So Chaucer's Troy was like London. And how he related it, how he imagined of Troy as a city besieged was inspired by his memory So inspired by 1381 memory. If we need more details about the memory, we'll come back to it in the third paragraph. For 3/5 of its length, the trajectory of Chaucer's poem is seemingly comic or upward moving. But this is part of its tragic structure, since a tragic protagonist should enjoy great prosperity before ending wretchedly. So what the author is saying is that, like, for 3/5, which is more than half of the length, the poem of Chaucer is comic, it's upward moving, but this is part of its tragic structure. So the comic is part of the tragic structure, since a tragic protagonist should enjoy great prosperity before ending wretchedly. Chaucer's Troilus and Chryside is actually a tragedy because it tells of a doomed love affair in a doomed ancient city. This is the main idea of the passage. Beautiful. So we have Chaucer's poem. So Chaucer's poem. And for the Chaucers, we could just I don't know what you call that, the double sign, which we don't have to repeat it. You can put it in the chat. Chaucer's poem, because I want to learn what it is called as well. My English is not that good, so I'm just practicing here. Chaucer's poem is so there's a happy ending. So there's like a prosperity before the tragedy. So some is mostly comic, but that's part of the tragedy. When his love affair goes well, young pagan Troilus strives to connect personal happiness and love with the energy driving the cosmos. When things turn sour, Chaucer leans increasingly on the military peril faced by Troy. The allusions are complicated all the more as Trojans trapped in Troy read recreationally about Thebes, another doomed city. So he's saying the allusions are complicated. As Trojans trapped in Troy read recreationally about Thebes, another doomed city. Why is that complicated? When Pandarus, pursuing Troilus' suit, comes to discuss the young man with his niece Chryside at the beginning of Book 2, he finds her within a paved parlor listening to a song of the siege of Thebes. What she knows in song form, Chaucer knew through Latin. What's more, Diomede, the Greek who will seduce Chryside, has serious Theban lineage, and just as the soothsayer Cassandra is trying to tell her brother Troilus this, the Thebaids Latin argument comes crashing onto the page in almost all manuscripts. Chryside enjoys tragedies like Chaucer's about love turned sour in ancient cities that are soon to fall. So the main point of this paragraph is that there is another doomed city which is called Thebes, and the allusions, I like, you don't need to kind of know the meaning of the definition of the words, but things are complicated, right? Whenever you don't know the meaning, you can just say things. So the things are complicated about the Thebes, which is another doomed city. And when Pandarus pursuing Troilus' suit comes to discuss the young man with his niece Chrysaid. So Chrysaid, we figure out here, is the character, right? But this guy is the niece of Pandarus, right? And Troilus is another guy, right? It's like the Troy, basically. So when Pandarus, pursuing Troilus' suit, comes to discuss the young man with his niece Chrysaid at the beginning of the book, he finds her within a paved parlor listening to a song of the siege of Thebes, what she knows in song form. Chaucer knew through Latin. So, what's more, the Greek who will seduce Chrysaid has serious Theban lineage, and just as the soothsayer Cassandra is trying to tell her brother Troilus this, the Theban Latin argument comes crashing onto the page in almost all manuscripts. Comes crashing onto the page. Chrysaid enjoys tragedies like Chaucer's about love turned sour and ancient cities that are soon to fall. So, yeah, it is like because we were told it's complicated, don't be fooled by these things. So, Thebes. The main point is that Thebes is another doomed city and had complicated relationship with Chrysaid. In the last paragraph, 6.1, Chaucer then also creates a poem about lineages that serves as a cautionary tale to London itself. So, yeah, lineage is the next thing. His poem takes him from Thebes to Troy, to first Statius, and then Boethius's Rome, to finally London itself. So, London had been besieged once by peasants, and Chaucer wants it to understand that it could always be besieged again, that like these great cities of old, it could too tragically fall. So, the author basically wants us to know that Chaucer wanted us to understand there's always a possibility of these great cities of old tragically fall. But in the first thing, Chaucer inspired by lineages and writes poem. Okay, and we know the main idea is that Chaucer's Troilus and Chrysaid is actually a tragedy because it tells of a doomed love affair in a doomed ancient city. Let me I'll definitely come back to this screen, but this is the main idea, right? Okay, cool. Let's do the questions. The author's attitude toward Chaucer's Troilus and Cresside is most accurately described as favorable, neutral, divided, disparaging. So we're asked about the attitude of the author, not Chaucer, right? So the author is talking about, I would say it's pretty neutral, and he's just telling us what Chaucer did and things like that. His attitude is not disparaging towards Chaucer. He's just stating the facts. So, yeah. Let's go to the next question. The first paragraph implies that Boccaccio would have been most likely to agree with which of the following statements about the devastation of war? So, first paragraph, we have it down here. The main idea was the tragic political story of Troy, and it was because Greeks destroyed it. So, but we were asked about Boccaccio. So, the first paragraph implies that Boccaccio would have been most likely to agree with which of the following statements about the devastation of war. So we know that Boccaccio is talked about here. Boccaccio drew Cresside much further into the foreground than stories of the Trojan War had earlier placed her. He chose to focus upon her relationship with Troilus. Things go well so long as things go badly once politics dictate Cresside's being given over to the Greeks in a prisoner exchange. So the devastation of war is here. Poem about the Trojan War at Naples in his early 20s. Its preface claims that the young, love-struck author's lady has moved away. Beyond the mountains. This fits nicely with imaginings of Troy with Greeks encamped beyond the city walls. The political story of Troy was always tragic. It was ancient city besieged by the Greeks for 10 years and eventually destroyed by the Greek army. It gave us the ancient notion of tragedy, the political destruction of a city-state. I think we had it in our main point. So let's go for the answer choices. Ultimately in war, so which one he's most likely to agree with? Ultimately in war, it is the soldiers on both sides who suffer the most. Yeah, this is something tragic. Boccaccio would like that. Second one, negotiated political settlements rarely solve the problems that cause wars. So political settlements that are negotiated rarely solve problems that cause wars. So we're talking about implications here. So does the author give us a sign that Boccaccio thought political settlements rarely solve any problems that cause the wars? He chose to focus upon the relationship. The political story of Troy was always tragic, an ancient city besieged and eventually destroyed by the Greek army. It gave us the ancient notion of tragedy, the political destruction of a city-state. So he's talking about the political destruction of a city-state. The ancient notion of tragedy is the political destruction of a city-state. The first option there, it's talking about the soldiers who suffer the most on both sides. Uh, but we are told about the political destruction of a city state. So the ancient notion of tragedy is the political destruction of a city state. Since we're talking about politics here, B is a better option than A. But are we talking about the problems that caused the war here? So things go well so long as the affairs stay within the walls of Troy. Things go badly once politics dictate. Chrysa is being given over. So because of so things have gone. So the problem has arisen from uh, once politics dictated, Chrysa is being given to Greeks in a prisoner exchange. So that's interesting. We should be aware of this. So it is the politics. Uh, so the problems that cause the wars is about the political settlement. So negotiated political settlements rarely solve the. So it's not about the rarity. It's more about if it does solve the problems or not. So things go bad when, if, and when uh, the uh, political negotiations uh, solve it. So things go well as long as the affair stays within the walls of Troy. C. It is worth considering how an armed conflict affects a city's residents. And we're talking about Boccaccio here. So Boccaccio drew this relationship of Chrysaid with Troilus because we're talking about this political thing and the fact that she was given, yeah, a war should be fought over matters of state, not personal relationships. So so the point of Boccaccio here is that okay, the first thing is that it's the relationship part is very important since the preface is about his love struck author's lady. She has moved away and beyond the mountains. She's away from Boccaccio, and this fits nicely with Troy, uh, as Greeks are encamped beyond the city walls, and the political story of Troy was always tragic. So it was destroyed by the Greeks and the Greek army, and it gave us the ancient notion of tragedy, which is the political destruction of a city state. So Boccaccio drew Chrysaid much further into the foreground than stories of the Trojan War had earlier placed her. So Chrysaid was like this love figure, uh, uh, the princess, like the wife figure to him, and he drew it much further into the foreground of the stories of Trojan War. He chose to focus on the relationship with Troilus. So uh, his main obsession is with the relationship that Chrysaid had with Troilus. so things go well as long as the affair stays within the walls of Troy. And things go badly once politics dictate Chrysides being given over to the Greeks. So we should choose the option that is talking about the relationship is most correct. So so after all, the first option, second option, third option are not talking about relationships, but the fourth option is. So it shouldn't be personal relationships that a war should be fought over, and not matters of state. That's my take on this. Which of the following discoveries would most strengthen the hypothesis that Chaucer used his poem to suggest that London was in danger? So, wait a second, let me catch up on here. Yes, okay. Which of the following discoveries would most strengthen the hypothesis? So, which of these options would strengthen that Chaucer used his poem to suggest that London was in danger? So, which of these following hypotheses would strengthen the fact that Chaucer used his poem to suggest that London was in danger? A. The names of many leaders of the prior peasant rebellion are used in Chaucer's poem. So, we want to show signs of Chaucer's poem being suggesting that London was in great danger. Now, the peasant rebellions leaders' names mentioning can of the prior peasant rebellion are used in Chaucer. The name of many leaders of the prior peasant rebellion. So mentioning the name of the rebellion's leaders doesn't show a great danger, in my opinion. B. The belief that London resembled Troy was widespread among English politicians. That is a good theme that also Chaucer was. Chaucer translated Boccaccio because it resonated with the English. It's mentioned in the second paragraph. So third thing was that Chaucer's Troy was like London. It was inspired by a 1381 memory, and also Chaucer's poem is mostly about a tragedy, so B is a really good option. The first time peasants attacked London, they were nearly successful in overthrowing the government. So it's again about the peasants, but it's more about the resemblance. And then last option is that while Chaucer was alive, England's king died and was replaced by his inexperienced son. Yeah, we're not talking about any of these. These are not the main points in the passage. It's B, which is the resemblance of London to Troy was widespread among English politicians. The main point of the passage is, we have it here in yellow highlight, that Chaucer. So the main point is that Chaucer's poem is actually a tragedy because it tells a doomed love affair in a doomed ancient city. So Chaucer made mostly minor changes to Giovanni Boccaccio's poem about Troy. That's not the main point. London bore some similarities to some of the ancient cities that were destroyed. No, the story of the Trojan War influenced many important literary works. Chaucer's poem is tragic because it involves the ends of relationships and cities. That is a great summarization of the main point. So D is the answer. Let me catch up here. I'm gonna definitely get a adaptable screen to my laptop, so we're not dealing with this here. What is the I need just a converter. That's it. So what is the significance of the what is the significance to the passage argument of the information in paragraph 5? So we have paragraph 5. The main point is that Thebes is another doomed city and had complicated relation with Chrysaor. So what is the significance to the passage argument of the information? To the passage argument of the information in paragraph 5, that Chrysaor listens to a song of the siege of Thebes. So the siege of Thebes definitely, like, what is the significance of it? It's basically the fact that, okay, it supports the author's main point. Yes, it does. It supports a point other than the main point. So you can also go to the paragraph itself. You can see that before that, the author says the allusions are complicated all the more as Trojans trapped in Troy read recreationally about Thebes, another doomed city. When Pandarus comes to discuss the young man with his niece Chrysaor, he finds her within a paved parlor listening to a song of siege, what she knows in song form. Chaucer knew through Latin. What's more, and still aren't to tell her brother. This the Thebes Latin argument comes crashing onto the page in almost all his scripts. Chrysaor enjoys tragedies like Chaucer's, but love turns sour in ancient cities that are soon to fall. Oh, so Chrysaor enjoyed the tragedy, the tragedy theme of the Theban story that she was reading, right? So it does not support a point other than the main point. It's about the tragedy again. It casts doubt on the author's main point. No, it contradicts a prior claim made in the passage. No, it's bullshit. It supports the main idea. It's choice A. Which of the following passage assertions is least supported by examples or explanations in the passage? So which of the following passage assertions is least supported by examples or explanations? Let's go through them. Chaucer's version of Troy was influenced by Chaucer's experience. So that was the preface. So, and there is a support, like, by example or explanation about it. The fact that wait a second. So the first one was about Boccaccio. My bad. The okay, Chaucer's experience. Since London style, Chaucer immediately saw great potential in the way Boccaccio tale could resonate with English, so he translated Boccaccio's work as London and Westminster Chaucer's time. We're not the same place. London was surrounded by separate Chaucer's wall. Let's go with the second options, other options. The story of Troy provided an original definition for tragedy. The story of Troy provided an original definition for tragedy. I'm not sure if it was. We talked about the originality of the story, so that could be a good answer for this question. we have Troilus and Chrysaor that contains warnings for the English government. Yes, it was well explained. Chaucer's Troy did not resemble the geographic layout of London. He does, I believe, we're not, so he does say, he does talk about this. Yeah, and also he talk about the experience. So B is the best answer. Cool. Let's go through these and see if we answered them correctly. Ooh, 38 minutes. Yes, we are among the 43% who answered this correctly. And for this one, we are also right, 61%. For this one, we have 48%. For this one, we have, ooh, which of the following discoveries most strengthen the hypothesis used his poem to suggest that London was in danger? The names of many leaders. The belief that London resembled Troy was widespread among English politicians. The question wants us to identify the statement is most in line with the idea that Chaucer used. So let's see, the main idea was for Chaucer tragedies are about doomed love in a doomed ancient city. Yes, that's the main idea that we also chose. To warn London against danger. We can find this discussion in paragraph 6. The author says that London had once been besieged by a peasant rebellion. Paragraph 6. London had been, and Chaucer wants it to understand that it could always be besieged again. Oh, so it's in great danger. Jeez. There, the author says that London had once been besieged. They say that Chaucer used this poem to warn London that it could be attacked again. The statement that strengthens this idea would provide evidence that Chaucer meant for his poem to be about London. To answer this question, we will eliminate the answer choices that are not in line with this idea. The widespreadness of so A is the good answer. B, we might find this answer choice appealing because it seems to show a connection between London and Chaucer's poem. If English politicians believed London resembled Troy, they might think that London could fall like Troy, thus they would take the poem as a warning. However, the questions then wants us to identify the statement that shows Chaucer used his poem to warn London. This answer choice does not suggest that Chaucer intended for his poem to be a warning to London, rather it describes what English politicians believed. It indicates that English politicians might take the poem as a warning, but it does not suggest that Chaucer meant for this to happen. It does not give evidence that Chaucer meant for his poem to be about London, so this statement does not answer the question sum. So the answer choice does not suggest that Chaucer intended for his poem to be a warning to London. However, the question then wants to identify the statement that shows Chaucer used his poem to warn London. So use his poem to use the poem. Mm, yeah, I'm reading the last paragraph, and even it does not like say explicitly that Chaucer mentioned that in his poem. But anyways, uh, this answer choice does not suggest that Chaucer intended for his poem to be a warning to London. Rather, it describes what English politicians believed. It indicates that English politicians might take the poem as a warning, but it does not suggest that Chaucer meant for this to happen. So, why not see if it's about the peasants? The first time peasants attacked London, they were nearly successful in overthrowing the government. So, it should be like about the poem itself, apparently. So, the explanation is that we might be drawn to this answer choice because it seems to align with the author's arguments. In paragraph 6, the author says that London had once been besieged by a peasant rebellion. They say that Chaucer used this poem to warn London that it could be attacked again. We might think that this warning would be stronger if the peasant rebellion was nearly successful. However, the question then wants us to identify the statement that shows Chaucer used his poem to warn London. The answer choice does not provide evidence that Chaucer intended for his poem to be a warning to London. Rather, it describes the peasant rebellion. The rebellion itself does not suggest that Chaucer was warning. So it's all about the poem being mentioned. Okay. So, what lesson do we take from this question? Q3 lesson. That so we need lessons here too. I mean, let's do cars lessons here. Then we can have missed questions later on as well. Okay, lessons. Q3 January 10th passage. The question stem words are the most important in choosing the correct answer than the idea. This is for specific questions mainly. Okay. Let's go to question 2. We got this one wrong as well. So let's see. The first paragraph implies that Boccaccio would have been most likely to agree with which of the following statements about the devastation of war. Okay. I would highly disagree with this so far. Let's see what is the explanation. Because the whole point of Boccaccio was about the relationship. So the question wants us to identify this statement that aligns with Boccaccio's view of war in paragraph 1. In paragraph 1, the author says that Boccaccio focused more on the relationship of Criseyde and Turles than previous authors. He showed how the Trojan War affected the relationship when Criseyde was given to the Greeks in a prisoner exchange. Thus, Boccaccio focused on how the war affected two Trojan citizens. I mean, it's about the relationship, not the citizens itself. To answer this question, man, we might find this answer choice appealing because the first paragraph discusses the relationship. We might think that Boccaccio is making a point about personal relationship war. However, this answer choice is incorrect for two reasons. First, the author does not discuss the cause of the Trojan War. Not a bad reason, honestly. When answering Carl's question, it is necessary to stick to the information within the passage and not draw on outside information. Ooh, this is a harsh lesson. No outside informations. A war should be fought over matters of state, not personal. But this is not like it's not about like his. The author is not saying that uh, the cause of the Trojan War was uh, personal relationships or matters of state. It's saying that matters of state should be preferred over personal relationships. Um, the passage does not discuss what caused the Trojan War, so we cannot make assumptions regarding what wars are fought over. Second, the author does not say that the relationship between Troilus and Chryseid caused the war. Rather, they say that Boccaccio wrote about how the relationship was affected by the war. Therefore, we do not know how Boccaccio would feel about wars being fought over personal relationships. This answer goes beyond information. This answer choice is correct because it is most in line with the author's argument in paragraph 1. In paragraph 1, the author says that Boccaccio focused more on the relationship of Chryseid. It showed how the Trojan War affected the relation when Chryseid was given to the Greeks in a prisoner exchange. Thus, Boccaccio focused on how the war affected two Trojan citizens. His poem is concerned with the lives of two people in a time of war, so he likely thinks it is worth considering a city's residents. In other words, his concern for two Trojan residents indicates that he probably believes one should think about how wars affect a city's people. What's B? Negotiated political settlements rarely solve the problems that cause wars. Yeah, it's not about causing. Does not discuss political settlement in general, so this implication is too broad. This answer is extreme. The passage does not suggest blue. Yeah. Okay. I hope this one is a neutral tone for the passage. Yes. Okay. Okay, not bad. Let's see what others are saying. 2 out of 6. Let's go. My average for Jacobson Car's passage has been about. I was having a stroke while reading this. Yesterday passages in question were way worse. Okay. So we can put a comment for others. I did an out loud comprehensive review of this passage, which took 15 minutes now, and two harsh lessons I learned was actually, so the one of the lessons was that never go beyond the passage, look, and the other one was to look at the question stem. Was so two harsh lessons I learned was where one, if specific questions for specific questions, like paragraph questions, the question stem is more important than the idea. The question stem I think this was also the case for oh shoot, my con is gone. We got these two wrong, right? Yeah. I did an out loud comprehensive review of this passage, which took 15 minutes right now, and the two harsh lessons learned were always look for that the so we could also say that, for example, Chris side and the other person was were not CIS residents, but that wouldn't be true. So it is worth considering how an armed conflict affects a city's residents. A war should be fought over matters of state, not personal relationships. Always look for ways that the that you can an option could be beyond passage info than talking about the idea in mind. So always look for ways that an option could be beyond passage info, regardless of it talking about the idea presented. Q2 because I chose D for Q2 with the reasoning saying the personal relationships, saying the personal relationship as what Boccaccio most agreed with. However, he did not say why a war should be fought. And 2, for specific questions referring to the paragraph, always for specific questions referring to the paragraph, always prioritize the question stem and not the idea. Stem as Stem asked about the poem for which one was it? It was Q3. For Q3, I chose B because the idea was the London resonated with the English, but this time asked about why Chaucer used his poem to suggest London's in danger. Okay, good session. I think the time I have is till 11:15. So I don't know why the clock is here, but yep. Let me put that in my okay. Can do another passage too. So yeah, the whole point being just yeah, 2 points. Specifically look for the questions that I'm answering it, and then also another point is to never go beyond the passage information. Okay, cool, we did this. Let's do another passage. Cool. We need another cards. Something we haven't done. Dickens and Collins. I don't think I have done this. Okay. Let's do this faster. I mean, still we didn't get the accuracy of 100%. We need to get 100% in most stuff, so like very consistently. So let's do this. Let me sip on the water. And you know your time is ticking when you're on the real exam. So the title is Dickens and Collins. An inventory of the resemblances between Charles Dickens' The Mystery of Edwin Drood and Wilkie Collins's The Moonstone provides enough evidence to suggest substantial influence. So, in this instance, the influence runs from Collins to Dickens, despite the fact that Dickens was originally Collins's mentor. Both novels draw on the East to impart an air of exotic mystery. Each has an evil character who leads a double life, masking villainy and lust under the cloak of respectability. Passages in both also reveal that their respective authors drew on an incident described in Dr. John Elliotson's Human Physiology as a source. Elliotson asserted that an item misplaced in a state of intoxication could be found when that state was reduplicated, even though the person who misplaced the object retained no memory of the initial act. What then did the younger Collins think of the new novel by his former mentor? In his often quoted comment on Drood, Collins annotated John Forster's lavish praise of the novel as follows: "To my mind, it was cruel to compare Dickens in the radiant prime of his genius with Dickens's less labored effort, the melancholy work of a worn-out brain." For Collins, his mentor was a shadow of his former self. So the first paragraph was about the resemblance. The main idea is the resemblances between Drood and Moonstone. The second paragraph is both authors, both Dickens and Collins, described drew on an incident described by Human Physiology from John Elliotson's. And third paragraph is what then did the younger Collins think of the new novel by his former mentor? In his often quoted comment on Drood, Collins annotated John Forster's lavish praise of the novel as follows: so his former mentor, what did the younger Collins think of the new novel by his former mentor? So the former mentor of the main idea for the fourth paragraph is that critics attach the importance they attach to the closeness of the two novels is different. Jerome Mercier believes in a fiercer sort of competition and sees the novel as a form of open combat between master and pupil. For Dickens' writing, Edwin Drood was a way to retaliate against Collins by creating his own version of a taut, sensational novel. For the pupil, outclassed and outranked, the options were limited, Collins's condemnation of Edwin Drood contends Mercier was a last-ditch attempt at self-defense. Mercier's assessment provides us profound insight into Dickens's use of Collins. Dickens borrowed from Collins, but did so in order to critique Collins. So it was first Collins who wrote it, and then Dickens wrote the thing. Throughout the 19th century, the major novelists engaged in a constant battle in which winners attempted to take all. It was a zero-sum game. One could only stay on top at the expense of discrediting one's rivals in an unending fight to command the broadest fictional readership. Thus, Dickens's transformations of Collins are never so radical that they cannot be coaxed out of hiding. Dickens instead wants us to see that he is borrowing from Collins. He makes the appropriations obvious. It is only through this process that Dickens manages to surpass and outdo all his rivals, correcting in the course of Edwin Drood all of Collins's supposed errors by settling old scores. This is completed by constructing violent fantasies cleverly worked out within the confines of his art. Strangely, this antagonistic relationship between Dickens and Collins makes Dickens the murderous uncle of the novel and Collins his murdered nephew. Despite being a murderer, likening himself with Uncle Jasper might have pleased Dickens. His murder, at least, is much more interesting. The novel's first half successfully conveys the narrator's unequivocal view that someone like Jasper is a horrible wonder apart, where people err, including even the professional students of the criminal intelligence, in attempting to reconcile the behavior of men like Jasper with the average intellect of average men. So the main idea of the passage is about, so we know the author is talking about the back and forth similarities and differences between Dickens and Collins. So the influence runs, so Collins influences Dickens, and despite the fact that Dickens was originally Collins' mentor, so Collins is the one who inspired Dickens. However, Dickens was the, sensei. Both novels draw on the East to impart on air of exotic mystery. I think this is the main idea of the passage. For Dickens, writing Edwin Drood was a way to retaliate against Collins by creating his own version of a taut, sensational novel. Okay. The author most likely mentions Dr. John Elliot's Human Physiology in order to explain why Collins' book contains references to Dickens' work. illustrate the kinds of resources that novelists used in their writing, provide part of the plot of Dickens's The Mystery of Edwin Drood, support the claim that Dickens and Collins' books have similarities. Yeah, this is the answer. The central thesis of the passage is that Collins wrote a book that was better than Dickens's Edwin Drood, owed Dickens for his success as a novelist, was copied by Dickens, who sought to attack Collins, and Dickens had a contentious relationship. Was a way to retaliate against Collins was copied by Dickens. Yeah, this is more true than. That's the main idea. It is mentioned here. That Dickens had largely finished The Mystery of Edwin Drood and given the manuscript to Wilkie Collins to edit before Collins started writing The Moonstone would most directly tend to challenge the passage claim that an analysis of the two books suggests that Collins influenced Dickens. So this is the opposite, right? Like Dickens had largely finished the mystery and given the manuscript to Wilkie to edit before Collins started writing The Moonstone. Friendly rivalry eventually emerged between Dickens wrote in an environment in which novelists competed with each other. Collins believed Dickens' book to be one of the worst Dickens had written. Yeah, it's the first one. Which of the following is most strongly suggested by Jerome Mackier's quotation in the passage? There was not much variation in the plots of sensational novels. Which of the following is most strongly suggested by Jerome Mackier's quotation in the passage? So, for example, right now I don't remember where Jerome Mackey was, but we can just go back to the past. So if we can find it here. We know it's not in the beginning section. It's here. So he believes in a fiercer for the pupil. Collins' condemnation here. Collins' condemnation of Edwin Drood contends Mackey was a last ditch at self-defense. So which of the following is most frequently suggested by quotation in the passage? Believes in a fierce historical and sees the novel as a form of open combat between master and pupil. For Dickens. For the pupil, outclassed and outranked. The options were limited. For so the pupil was Collins. She was outclassed and outranked. Collins' condemnation of Edwin Drood contends Mackey was a last ditch at self-defense. What is this guy saying? It's very paradoxical. There was not much variation in the plots of sensational novels in Collins' time. Novelists were not supposed to attack other members of the profession. Collins may have reacted differently to Dickens' book if Dickens had not critiqued him. The Collins-Dickens relationship was common to novelists and their students. It's either C or D. Fiercer sort of competition sees the novel as a form of open combat between master and pupil. A last-ditch attempt at self-defense. Reacted different Dickens' book if Dickens had not critiqued him. Yeah, it's that one. The discussion in the first paragraph suggests that the relationship of Collins to Dickens was originally that of Collins to Dickens. So Dickens was the mentor. So Collins to Dickens was a son to father, not the boss to worker. Which of the following, if assumed to be true, most supports the author's assessment of the mystery of Edwin Drood? If assumed to be true, most supports the author's assessment of the mystery of Edwin Drood. A character in Dickens' book makes fun of a book called The Lunar Rock, Moonstone, Lunar Rock. Critics consider, so we want something that supports the author's assessment. So most supports the author's. So it should be related to Edwin Drood, right? Critics consider The Moonstone to be one of Collins's least important novels. No. Collins later wrote a book that caricatured another author's famous work. The Mystery of Edwin sold far fewer copies than Moonstone. So the assessment of the mystery of Edwin Drood. The first one is so because we're talking about only the mystery of Edwin Drood and the author's assessment, we should forget about Collins. So which of the following, if assumed to be true, most supports the author's assessment of the Edwin Drood contains a number of recognizable Collinsian elements, maintaining on the one hand that Collins had nothing to teach Dickens. Chidlemas, on the other hand, too, may have been in hidden competition. Yeah, we'll go with first one. Nice. A is the... Man, I got 100% on this one, eh? Everyone's like questions it, but I have to admit that Monster with the Lunar Rock was well played. By process of elimination, you can get it. Being you're obviously wrong. Collins stopping another author is not the main idea of the passage. See, there's a mindset for getting all of them right. So I think our timer is also it takes, so we have to go for a break, and I'll see you in half an hour.